Ever feel like interest rates are this kind of mysterious force, like dictating your financial life? Well, get ready for a wild ride. We're going back in time, like way back, 5,000 years back.
That's right. We're going to see how this whole interest thing started and, more importantly, what it means for you and me right now.
We've got a ton of cool sources for this deep dive. Ancient legal stuff, modern economic analyses. It's going to be fascinating. The history of interest is way more interesting than anyone ever told me in school, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And what's really
Yeah.
cool is that these sources we dug up, they go way beyond just, simple money stuff. We're talking about risk, value, even power dynamics that built entire civilizations.
Speaking of ancient civilizations, did you know that way back in 3000 BCE, Hammurabi, the Babylonian king, he actually set interest rate limits in his famous code? Can you imagine that?
It's mind-blowing, right? Imagine like owing someone interest payable in barley. I mean, it seems crazy compared to our world today, but it really shows you something important. Interest has always been about managing risk. Back
Yeah.
then, it was like a bad harvest, right? Today, it's all about your credit score, job security, that kind of thing.
Right, right. The game's changed, but the basic idea is the same. And those principles, they played out in some really wild ways throughout history. For example, we always think about the gold standard as this ancient thing, but it wasn't that long ago that most global currencies were directly linked to how much gold was worth.
And what people forget is that this system, it seems simple, but it caused some major, major problems. Like governments, they had less control over their economies, you know what I mean? Because
Wow.
everything was tied to this one thing, this finite resource, gold. And that led to these boom and bust cycles that, honestly, we're still dealing with the effects of today.
And speaking of powerful forces messing with economies, our research turned up some juicy stuff about, wait for it, the Rothschilds. These guys weren't just bankers, they were like financial titans, bankrolling wars, whispering in the ears of governments.
Their story, it's really the perfect example of how money and power, they've always been intertwined. I mean, think about it. The Rothschilds, they were masters of international finance, especially during wartime. They amassed this crazy wealth, crazy influence. They basically shaped how modern central banking works.
It's like something out of a movie. You've got the secret meeting, Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia, a bunch of powerful bankers, and boom, the Federal Reserve is born.
And, there are all these conspiracy theories about it, but what often gets lost is that these bankers, they were actually trying to fix a real problem, right?
Yeah.
They saw these constant financial panics that kept crippling America, so they thought, what if we create a central bank? A bank that can control how much money is out there and, crucially, set the interest rates.
But that power to just manipulate interest rates, it seems like it can backfire pretty badly. No, yeah, the Fed might prevent some disasters, but their policies, especially in the last few decades, they've also created some massive bubbles, haven't they?
Exactly. And that brings us to the big problem we've got today,
Right.
this debt time bomb we're all sitting on.
And it's not just me saying this. We looked at a bunch of sources for this deep dive, economic journals, historical analyses, all sorts of stuff, and everyone agrees we're drowning in debt. Not just individuals with student loans, I mean entire countries with these crazy deficits.
It's a very, very precarious situation. And to understand how we got here, we have to go back. We have to look at everything. Those ancient green loans you mentioned, the gold standard, the Rothschilds, it's all connected. It's the only way to understand what's going on with the economy today.
So it's like we've traded in the barley for bonds, right?
Yeah.
But the scale of it all, this debt, it's kind of terrifying, I mean, are we seriously headed for another big crash? Is that what all this means?
That's the question, isn't it? The million-dollar question. And our sources, they've got some pretty different takes on this. Some are like, we're doomed. Look at history, the fall of Rome, the Great Depression. But others, they're more optimistic. They think the system, we can adapt. Maybe technology will save us, that sort of thing.
It's interesting, though, because no matter what side they're on, like crash or no crash, a lot of our sources point to 2008, after that whole financial crisis thing, as a turning point. Interest rates went crazy low back then, right? Trying to get the economy going again.
Exactly. And yeah, at the time, it probably felt good. Cheap mortgages, loans were easy to get, but it was like a sugar rush. It felt good for a little bit, but it led us straight to this mountain of debt that we have now.
So what now? What do we do? Any solutions out there, or are we all just kind of along for the ride?
We'll get this. Some of the ideas in these sources, they're pretty radical. I'm talking debt jubilee. Basically, wipe the slate clean, forgive a whole bunch of debt, start over,
A giant do-over for the global economy. Sounds nice, but is that even possible?
Well, it's not unheard of, right? Throughout history, they've done these debt jubilees, especially during crazy times, big upheavals. But there's always a but. Some experts say it just makes people reckless. Like, oh, they'll bail us out again, might as well go crazy with debt. That kind of thinking.
It's wild to think about, though, like just hitting the reset button on the entire financial system. And it's not just some fringe idea either. We even found this one source, a historian, studies economic warfare, and they were saying how war, yeah, kind of dark, but war has often been a way to get rid of debt, like a brutal reset button. Changes the whole power structure.
Yeah, not exactly the most pleasant solution,
Yeah.
but it shows you how intertwined everything is, right? Money, politics, even war. They're all connected, always have been.
Makes you think. But, okay, so if war's off the table and this debt jubilee thing is a long shot, what else is there?
There are some folks out there, they think we need a total system reboot. Like start from scratch, rethink the whole thing. And this is where it gets really interesting. We're talking a world maybe without interest.
Well, without interest rates, as in they don't exist. How would loans even? What would be the point?
It sounds crazy, right? But there are models, historical examples, even new trends popping up. Islamic finance, for instance, they don't do interest. It's all about profit and loss sharing. Interesting stuff.
Oh, right. And wasn't there something about cryptocurrencies in one of our sources, like how blockchain and all that could bypass the big banks, make things more equal?
Exactly. And then you've got peer-to-peer lending, cutting out the middleman, the banks again, and often with way better rates for borrowers. These things, they're still new, but it shows you people are looking for alternatives, right? Whether it's tech driving it or just wanting a system that's more fair, it's happening.
So here we are, right? Drowning in debt, the Fed doing its thing. But maybe there's hope. Maybe we can actually change things, rewrite the rules.
That's what's so exciting about all this. This deep dive has shown us history is a guide, but it doesn't dictate the future. Our relationship with money, it's always evolving. And who knows what the next chapter holds.
It really makes you think about the possibilities, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
we started with ancient barley loans, and now we're talking about, like, a future where interest might not even exist. Crazy.
It's amazing what humans can come up with, right? And one thing we've seen again and again in these sources, financial systems, they're not set in stone. They change. They adapt. New tech, new ideas, values shift.
Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
It's like this huge experiment. Each generation, we add our own little twist to the story of money. What works, what doesn't.
Exactly. Some people might find it scary, all this change, but I think it's exciting. Because it means we have a say in this, right?
Yeah.
We can shape the future of finance. It's not just some like pre-programmed thing.
That's a powerful way to look at it. It's not just about understanding the past. It's about using what we learn to make better choices. For ourselves, sure, but also for the whole system.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, that's the biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive into interest rates. Knowledge is power. Understanding how this stuff works, that's the first step to actually changing it.
It's been quite a ride, that's for sure. From ancient Mesopotamia to crypto and blockchain, who knew interest rates could be this interesting?
We've seen it all, haven't we? Hidden connections, busted myths,
Yeah.
and hopefully we've sparked some curiosity out there. Got people thinking about the future of money,
Yeah.
What could it be? What should it be?
And on that note, folks, as you go about your day, take a minute to think about how all this plays out in the real world. Interest rates, debt, how money moves around. It's everywhere once you start noticing it.
Keep those eyes peeled. It's a fascinating world out there.